Hi, I'm Bennett. I'm the Title IX and Non-Discrimination Investigator for SUNY Plattsburgh. I'm working together with Butterfly Blaze Boyer, our Title IX coordinator, and Zaisha Nadler, our Violence Prevention Education and Outreach coordinator, to gather information and put it together for you in some videos that we are putting out on our new YouTube channel. We're doing this in an effort to make sure that everybody is as informed as possible when it comes to reporting options, resources, any other information about programming, education that might come up for people. It's a great time right now to be doing this with the remote and distance learning situation that we find ourselves in, but hopefully we can just keep this information going and keep creating content in the future once we get back to a more normal setting that we're used to, and having all this information available on the YouTube channel will hopefully go a long way in making sure everybody is as informed and educated as possible when it comes to all of these matters and their rights, etc. That being said, what I would like to focus on specifically is my role as an investigator. Butterfly and Zaisha have done a great job of being very thorough in the videos they've created so far and covering, again, reporting options, resources, etc. And so I'm not going to go over something that they've already done a great job of explaining. So where I come in the process is once somebody who is a reporting individual has decided that they want to go forward with an investigation, that's where I come in. No investigation is completely like the next one. Every situation is different. The individuals participating in the investigation are going to have different needs, accommodation requirements, etc. And so each individual investigation is unique to itself. Investigations should be completed within a 60-day time frame. We endeavor to complete it in a shorter time frame and more often than not do so. If there are extenuating circumstances that occur, then the 60 days may be disregarded. That would be determined on a case-by-case basis, but based on the law, the 60 days generally is what we need to and do adhere to. Since we are not meeting in person with people currently, we will do any investigation processes remotely. So interviews that I would have with a reporting individual, with an accused individual, with witnesses that might have direct knowledge or information about a particular situation, those would be done remotely on some kind of conferencing platform to be determined as we move forward. What that might look like for a reporting individual when we meet with them is, making sure that our process is as trauma-informed as possible. So questions that are open-ended and not leading in any way. Questions that are trauma-informed and that can just ask for the who, what, why, where of a situation without adding any sort of opinion or any other kind of thought from my own end into the process, but just getting the information as authentically as possible from the person that I'm working with and sitting with. As far as meeting with somebody who may have experienced trauma, if they are struggling with having to keep sharing their experience over and over repeatedly, if they're involved in other processes that they're also having to share the experience, if we can, if others will allow us to do so, we will work with other agencies, law enforcement potentially, to reduce the number of times that has to occur. So doing joint meetings as much as possible, and just making sure that the experience doesn't have to be shared more than is necessary for the situation. If somebody needs to take a break during the experience of an interview and just take a breather because it's becoming overwhelming, that is, of course, totally understandable, and we are happy to provide that accommodation. If people are, needing to meet multiple times because they find that during an interview they just can't go forward anywhere in that particular day and they need to take a step back and come back on a different day, that's okay too. We're happy to accommodate that as well. The trauma recall response is different than a normal memory recall, and so you might remember things over days, weeks, or months in a way that you don't, typically wouldn't experience. So, you easily could probably remember something that happened last week that wasn't a traumatic experience, but a traumatic experience that might have occurred. Your recollection would potentially look different because of things that occur when people experience trauma. As far as accused and reporting individuals, when you do meet with us, or when I meet with anybody for interviews, you are welcome and allowed to have an advocate or advisor with you for these meetings. They're as a support for you. They're to assist you through the process as best they can to make it as, easy as possible in an uneasy situation. That being said, additionally, and I mentioned also, I might have interviews with people who are witnesses who have direct knowledge or information about an experience or situation. And at the end of the day, after all of those interviews are completed, what I would then do is transcribe those interviews, create statements based on the transcription, and then reach back out to everybody who I've interviewed and review that statement. Make sure, yes, this is, to my recollection, how I expressed my experience or my version of the experience, and the truth to my knowledge of the experience, the facts that I have. And once that's all done, I would have everybody sign off on those statements, and those statements would be included in an investigation report. Additionally, what would be included in that report would be information about the facts of the case, information about what potential violations of what codes of conduct have occurred, and also any evidence that might be available. So evidence that's presented by the reporting individual, the accused individual, or witnesses. The evidence could be physical evidence from an exam by a medical professional, with the proper releases, of course, being signed by anybody who's offering up that information. If there is information or evidence in the form of text messages or any other sort of messaging through various apps, there are many social media apps available to people that they communicate on, just to name a few: Snapchat, WhatsApp, messaging. And we are not endorsing or supporting any of these platforms necessarily, but we are just aware that there are many social media platforms, many of which I'm not going to name here because there are too many to name. But if you have information on an app or in some tangible way that we can review with you, then we would like that information as well to be presented as evidence. The more evidence that can be presented to support your experience and your version of the experience for the case, it's more beneficial to you if you have that evidence. As far as participation in the process goes, it's not required, and so somebody might decide, I don't want to be a part of this process. I don't feel I need to be, and that's okay. Things will still move forward potentially without your participation as an accused individual or as a witness. But with that being said, if you are not participating, your version of the experience and the truth as you can recall and present it is not going to be part of the investigation report, and that will potentially inform the hearing process and the ultimate decision that's made. So just keep in mind that if you decide not to participate in a process for whatever reason, the way that you might have shared your experience or the facts as you know them, that's going to be missing from this process. So once everything's put together, an investigation report is complete, there are 3 ways that investigations can be closed. The first way is closed by investigation. And so that would mean that the determination is that there is no possible way that what was reported could have occurred. And in that instance, the investigation would be closed. It wouldn't move forward for any student conduct review. It could also be closed by the reporting individual. So if the reporting individual chooses to withdraw a formal complaint, they can do that, and at that point, the investigation would be closed. I believe they can return and go forward with the complaint if they decide to do so at a later time, but can decide if they want to, that they want to withdraw the complaint. The last option would be the escalation to student conduct for review. So it would be escalated to the conduct board for a hearing. Charges would be filed for the potential violation of the student code of conduct, whatever code of conduct might have been violated for that particular instance. And in any of these scenarios, the reporting individual and the accused individual will receive simultaneous notification from the Title IX coordinator. So everything as far as information about these important steps that are happening in the process will be provided to reporting and accused individuals at the same time. That's a really important thing to note. Once it gets to the student conduct office, their job is to then have a hearing in front of 3 to 5 hearing members, hearing board members, and then have anybody who is participating in the process who's willing or able to participate in that process as well. I'm not sure what that looks like yet as far as if we're still in a remote learning setting. I imagine they will be also using some sort of platform like the one I'm using now, some sort of video conferencing platform. But those questions should be, and any other questions rather, should be directed to the student conduct office. So if you have questions about the process, the student conduct process itself, I would recommend that you reach out to the student conduct office with those questions. That being said, I'm going to go ahead and show you some information. So Student Conduct Office, Director of the office is Larry Allen. He can answer any questions that you have about the process, and I imagine any questions about what the process looks like right now during the things that we're experiencing with remote and distance learning. There are a few other people within the office that could potentially answer questions for you. The information here, as far as contact information, phone and email, whatever method is easier for you to use to reach out to that office. The information here about, you have the student and group conduct manuals, you have how to prepare for a student conduct process if you are getting to that point, or frequently asked questions about the conduct process. So some of the questions you have might be answered just by looking at the website. So be sure to do so if you have questions, and then if you have further questions that need clarification beyond that, then of course reach out to that office and get that clarification that you need. And that being said, at that point that there would be a hearing, I would then present the case to the hearing board and to the director of student conduct within the hearing. I might have questions throughout the hearing for people participating in the process, meaning the accused, or at that point the responding individual and the reporting individual or witnesses. And then the hearing board would determine with their standard of evidence, which is a preponderance of evidence, whether or not the responding individual is found responsible. So, and unlike a criminal justice process where the preponderance or the standard of evidence rather is beyond a reasonable doubt, the student conduct hearing process uses the preponderance of evidence standard, which is a 51% chance that the incident as reported by the reporting individual more than likely occurred, and that the violation of whatever codes of conduct are being elevated to this situation have been made. So that would be how that went at that point. Beyond that, if you have any further questions about what I've talked about, please don't hesitate to ask them, put them out there. If you have ideas about content that we haven't put out there already, please feel free to throw things out there for us to think about and maybe put more content out that we're not, that haven't occurred to us already. I hope that everybody is staying safe and that things are going okay for you in this sort of uncertain time that we're living in right now. And I look forward to communicating with you more through this new platform that we have. Thank you.